It's a statistic that we've brought up several times now over the last year. We're talking about women falling out of the workforce because of the pandemic. NBC News correspondent Stephanie Ruhle joins me now to talk more about this. So Stephanie, thanks for joining us first of all, but let's dive into this one. Women have been disproportionately hit by pandemic job losses. Let's talk about why this is.
Well, think about it. From the beginning, when there were shutdowns, what industries closed first, right? It was service, it was retail, it was hospitality, it was leisure. Women had many of those part-time jobs, those jobs that were in the service industry, they got hit the hardest. Then think about childcare issues. There was this vicious cycle, right? Childcare centers closed because they were forced to close. Then they reopened, and so many people had lost their jobs or their kids were going to school virtually, and many child care centers closed. We saw women, mothers, much more than fathers out there, go home and take care of their children. That kept women out of the workforce. Now, in the last month, since jobs are coming back, we actually saw 300,000 women get back to the workforce. Why? It's no surprise. You saw on Friday what industries were hiring again. Hospitality, education, leisure. That's a positive, but we need to get women in better, more stable jobs so they're not so vulnerable. We can't just let women get back to normal. We need to use this opportunity to create a new normal.
And so that sounds encouraging when you talk about the 300,000 back to work in that latest stat. However, we have to look long term. What could be the implications here if women are not able to get back to work at all?
Long term, this is not good news. We haven't seen these level unemployment numbers for women since the 80s. And even think about in the last few years, we have talked about child care issues, not just being a woman's issues. And the longer women are home now taking care of their children long term, not necessarily men, we're going to go back to looking at women as predominantly the family caregiver, predominantly the homemaker. And that woman should have that choice, but it shouldn't necessarily be her obligation. One other thing to think about is when you start working again, and you get priced for what your next job is, that's usually based on your last job. And the longer you're out of work, the harder it is to get back and to climb that ladder. And the other thing I would point out, it's not just like time stops when you're not working. Think about all the things on a regular basis you and I might be saving for, our retirement, a home we might want to buy, our kids' college education. The longer we're out of work, the further that timeline gets pushed back. And these are real lifetime goals that are now being impacted.
Now, we have a lot of stories and, a lot of moments that we celebrate as women with us making so many advances. But something like a pandemic can really make you see where a lot of women stand and that, we've sort of been pushed backwards in a way because of the pandemic. Let's talk about a post-pandemic future. All right. So the economy is recovering. We are starting to be more hopeful that things are getting back to normal, whatever that looks like. Is there any way that workplaces are going to make some real permanent changes, to include more women?
Well, there absolutely is that opportunity. And what the pandemic exposed is we've had a whole lot of you go girl talk and conferences about equality and talk about women getting ahead. But when you actually looked at how we were impacted during the pandemic, we're way farther behind than we thought we were. So this is a wake-up call, and it's a call to action. Vice President Kamala Harris has said this is an emergency. So the question is, what are we going to do? Advocates are calling for all sorts of different measures, actually changing pay so it's equal. We are still seeing women get 82 cents to a man's dollar, to actually have long-term affordable childcare in this country, which we don't have, paid parental leave, and lastly, as we focus on getting women back to the workforce, real skills training program, training women for better, higher paying jobs in industries like infrastructure and technology, where beforehand we weren't in those jobs. So when you think about who was able to work from home, it ended up being predominantly men who have those white collar jobs. The opportunity is now, as we reskill the American worker, let's get women in some of those higher paying, more stable industries. Right now, we have to look at coming out of COVID as an opportunity for women.
All right, don't talk about it, be about it. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for joining us all this week. A look at the future of America's workplaces beginning tonight on Nightly News at 6:30 here on 11 Alive.